Yeah, you want to get going. So, David Anderson. So, David is the director in the SCORE group and is responsible for the global deployment and development of the company's valve condition and performance monitoring products and services, which are focused on delivering emissions reductions, operating cost reductions, risk minimization, and efficiency maximization for the benefit of stakeholders. With 39 years of experience working directly in the valve industry, David has worked in many roles. He's in his 29th year of employment with the SCORE Group and has been involved in valve diagnostics and condition monitoring for 20 years. David is a fellow of the Institute of Directors, a chartered quality professional, member of the Chartered Quality Institute, and a member of the Institute of Asset Management. He's a time-served mechanical engineering technician by trade and has a wide array of engineering and business qualifications, and is passionate about sharing his knowledge, coaching, and mentoring others. So if you'd like to...
That was a long introduction. It never looks that long when you write it down there. The most important part of that whole script, I think, is mechanical engineer. So that's where my background comes from. We've been working now on emissions for a good few years, and I have to say the American market is more developed in terms of its maturity, and I guess that's probably been driven a little bit by the EPA's involvement. So the presentation that I'm going to show you here has a bit of an international flavour about it as well. I didn't just want to speak from an American perspective, because I think there are things happening in other parts of the world too that are relevant for you. So I'll try and keep it succinct. We are in times where everyone's talking about ESG, environmental social governance. Pretty much every CEO up and down the length and breadth of every country around the world is looking at KPIs which have some element of these three things built into them. Also, operating companies who want to expand or grow their business and need capital investment are now being asked questions such as, what's your ESG policy? If you don't have a robust ESG policy and can demonstrate that your proposal for your business expansion is sustainable, guess what? The bank's not giving you the money. So this has been amplified not just from the EPA start point, but this has now reached the C-suite, and it's pretty critical that we all get on board with it. I'm going to try and be apolitical in the room, because I know that, you know, in America especially, politics has become very polarised. We have the same kind of scenario in the UK. That's where I live in Scotland. So I don't want to make any political comment, but what I will say is, I made the elements of this presentation in the Valve World exhibition, and people said to me, yeah, but you know, this guy's in the White House or that guy's in the White House and everything changes. There is an element to that. It's a little bit of a sine curve. 1 minute it's in fashion, the next minute it's out of fashion in the White House. But the reality is, there's an upward trajectory. Okay, we know that global warming, the scientists have been able to prove some of that, and so what's happened is that the sharing of that knowledge is not just driving financial decision making, it's now also driving all these international standards that you can see at the bottom of the screen here. These are organisations which on a daily basis promote sustainability, promote good governance in all operating conditions. So what we're seeing is an absolute tidal wave of standards and compliance requirements. You thought you had it bad previously. The bad news is it's going to get a whole lot worse. So it's becoming a minefield. You know, which standards should we comply with? What we're trying to do. What we're trying to do in this presentation is say, yes, all these things are coming into play, but the core of what we're trying to achieve has not really changed. We just need to get better at it. And there's lots of people in the room next door trying to help you on that journey. Hopefully we're one of them. So in terms of what I've just described about the White House, the same's happening in Brussels. Obviously that's our higher power, although if you listen to certain people in the UK and talking about Brexit, we don't report to Brussels anymore. But regardless of where you sit in the world, these things are being internationalized in a way that wasn't happening previously. So if everyone's working to different standards, we can't really benchmark and we can't really work out where we sit on that continuum of compliance or not. So there's a convergence that is required. That standardization is going to accelerate over time. Something that's driving this from behind the scenes is the United Nations. So what the United Nations have done is they've come up with a 17-point plan that says, if you have an environmental social governance agenda, you should be looking to having policies in each of these 17 areas. If you're a globalized company, this is what best practice looks like. So in terms of what we do in SCORE, we're trying to tick as many of the boxes as we can, but it's a journey. Nobody's going to wake up tomorrow morning and say, yeah, we can tick all 17 boxes. There's an element of effort required, and there's an element of change required. So what we've done in the past is not going to take us into that current and new space. We're going to have to do things slightly differently. So we need a little bit of guidance behind us. When we talk about ESG, there's an environmental element, a social element, and a governance element. How are you organising your business? That's the governance. How are you controlling? What are your policies and your procedures? How are you organising your business? The social element is how you're looking after your people, but it goes beyond the factory gates as well. We're now thinking about how are we protecting our communities? How are we helping our communities? So you'll hear a lot about social justice. You know, my house is about 5 miles from a gas plant, a processing plant. And when the flare goes off, all the ladies who've hung their washing out on the washing lines are now getting black soot dropping on the washing line because the flare's pumping all that soot into the atmosphere, which comes down and they have to redo their washing. That's not good community engagement. Yeah, the PR that comes along with that is terrible. My favourite story about that is the very first time I went on an overseas trip with one of our technology products. I ended up at PCK Refinery in Germany. Anybody familiar with that? PCK Refinery in Germany is a receiving plant for all the gas that comes from east of there, through Poland and Ukraine and all these Eastern European countries. They built a gas plant in the middle of a national park. Why would you do that? So as soon as their flare goes off, the CEO of Shell is getting phone calls direct to his desk saying, what's happening with this flare? So social governance goes beyond the business. It's not just about training our people, looking after our people. And of course, the environmental piece is what I've just spoken about, all that standardization, convergent. So the more boxes you can tick here, the more the finance companies, investment companies, the investors are going to want to work with you, because sustainability can only be delivered when you're ticking all these boxes. So, definitions of net zero. This really frustrated me. Again, as I say, we've been working on this for a long time. Every time I ask somebody to define net zero, because it's in every part of the literature for every environmental company, what do you mean by net zero? And I always got a different answer. So I tried to find something that would be a simple, easy to remember way of describing what net zero is. Where we should be actually pitching is absolute zero, not net zero. But to get to absolute zero is a long way in the future. So we talk about targets, 2035, the Scottish Government has said we'll be net zero. I think the USA, most people have kind of resigned themselves to, we'll pitch for 2050 because it's going to be too painful to do it any sooner. So give ourselves a chance to succeed. Net zero is effectively the amount of carbon you're putting into the atmosphere is offset by the amount of carbon that can be extracted from the atmosphere. So we're not on an upward trajectory at that point. We've got a flat line of moving forward. So we're going to need solutions that reduce carbon production and also take carbon back out of the atmosphere. And there's lots of ways we can do that. So you hear people talking about scope 1, 2 and 3 emissions, and we're going to come to that. But the best way I could find on the internet for describing net zero is if you imagine a bathtub and you're opening the tap, that's all the carbon we're producing right now. If the plug is in the drain, the bath will fill up. But if you can take the plug out the drain, the bath will empty. So the more you open the tap, the bigger the drain you need. So all this carbon capture and storage, all these other ways of taking carbon back out the atmosphere, they're going to have to be accelerated, because guess what? The demand for energy is going up, and energy is the biggest producer of carbon, excepting of course the cows, because they produce a lot of methane. Let's keep focused on the energy. So why is net zero emissions important? I've already said UN Sustainable Development Goals, there's 17 of them, but there's really 5 key priority criteria that you want to have in place in any part of your business. Make sure your ESG policies are working and delivering what you require. So environmental protection, of course, we need to keep our people safe and make sure they go home to their families at night. There is a financial impact to all of the things that we're going to do in terms of governance. You don't get anything for nothing anywhere. So there is a cost associated with it. So the other presentation I'm going to make at the conference is, everyone's focused on cost, you should be focused on benefits. So I'll come back to that in the other presentation. I'll be doing that tomorrow. Production needs to be optimized, because that's what generates the profits, that pays the costs for all this extra stuff that we're doing in terms of governance. And of course, PR. I've just mentioned that company who's putting out that suit and it's landing on people's washing lines. Not good. So the reputational risk of operating any production process is being amplified. America is the land of litigation. That's what we call it in the UK. So the probability is, if you make a mistake or something goes wrong, there's a lawyer knocking at your door. And you just have to look at Deepwater Horizon to understand the full impact of that. That was, I don't even know, I couldn't even put a number on the final number of billions that cost Amoco. See the word I used there? Everybody says BP, because that's a British company. Amoco. I said I wasn't going to get political. Okay, Scope 1, 2 and 3 emissions. Understanding where your emissions are coming from is the start of the journey of getting to net zero. So Scope 1 emissions is everything that's direct in your process. So that's consumption of materials, it's waste, it's everything that contributes to either your product or your service delivery. Scope 2 emissions is the consumables in terms of energy, for example. So this is why a lot of companies are now saying, who is our energy supplier? Because as world demand for energy grows, and it's going to grow 30% in the next 10 years, according to some statisticians, that's a massive jump. So if we're putting more carbon in to get that extra 30% so we can all charge our iPhones at night, or Android, again, be apolitical, we're going to need that energy to be there, but we're going to need it from green sources. We can't rely on fossil fuels moving forward. So Scope 2 emissions, big target for the energy companies. Scope 3 emissions is the majority of emissions that are happening in the world today, and it's the least regulated scope in the marketplace. So everyone's focusing on 1 and 2, but by volume, the biggest contributor is Scope 3 emissions. So we have to start that journey now. We have to start thinking about where they're coming from. We have to get smarter. I laugh as I go around the world and look at the maturity of recycling campaigns, even just on trash. Look, is there a separate bin for plastic? Is there a separate bin for paper? Simple changes that we can make a huge contribution. Scope 3 is everything in your supply chain vertical. That's everything you buy in raw materials. So that's all the Scope 1 and Scope 2s of your sub-suppliers contribute to your Scope 3. Then, in terms of what you do, what you produce, all of your activities contribute to the product or service that you deliver. So your vertical supply chain out to your customers. And what do they do with their products after they've used your products? Simple little changes we can make in that supply chain can have a huge impact. You probably all buy milk to have on your cereal in the morning. So in the UK, we have a colouring system on the milk tops. So blue is full fat milk, green is semi-skimmed, white is fully skimmed. You can't recycle those caps because they're different colours. So the manufacturer said, why are we doing this? Just put it on the label, right? Okay, it's great to walk into the supermarket and just give a double check. Yeah, I've got the right colour cap, but it's on the label anyway. So let's make all the caps white, and then we can recycle it with the rest of the bottle. So these are the things we have to be thinking about in making those supply chain, vertical supply chain, scope 3 emissions reduced. And recycling is going to be ramped up massively. I get a little bit frustrated with carbon offsets, people talking about carbon offsets. So there are only 4 ways we can start to reduce carbon, and the 4 are on the screen now. And you can see, number 1 is the biggest part of the triangle. As we come, we see the law of diminishing returns. Are any of the organisations you work with planting trees? No? There's a brewing company in Scotland that claims to be carbon negative because they're planting trees. And I said, how many trees have you planted? Where are they planted? And how long is it going to take them to grow? Right? Okay, we've got till 2035 in Scotland to get. So I guess that's 15 years worth of a tree growing. The chairman of Oxfam in the UK commissioned a study to find out how many trees would need to be planted to get to carbon neutral, net zero. How many trees do you think that requires? Any guesses? 1 million?
More than you can plant in the UK.
So I won't tell you by number of trees, but they calculated the space required to plant those trees was 5 times the landmass of India, 2.5 times the size of the United States. So we're not planting trees anytime soon. Level 4 offsets is not the future, that is not the answer. So we have to start thinking about these other things. So removal is your carbon capture and storage. Replacement is your wind farms, your solars, all that activity. And of course the reduction is us driving efficiency models. Can we use less materials? You'll hear guys talking about 3D printing. Well, the future is 3D printing. Why is it the future? Well, I'll tell you a couple of reasons. Number 1, you've got a lot less wasted raw material because you're actually printing the thing in the size it needs to be. So you've got less machining, less waste, less recycling required. By the time you start moving materials about, you're incurring costs in terms of your carbon footprint because we buy silicon chips from China. That's either got to be on a boat, a plane, a truck, however, to get to your front door. These things are using fossil fuels to propel those vehicles. So where do we sit in this? We can do something in all of these 4 boxes, but I would rather start at the top and look at efficiencies and work forward from there. So what you need to have in your organisation to drive those efficiencies is some sort of efficiency strategy that takes you to that easy place to make the biggest possible return on investment in terms of your reduction of carbon emissions. And by the way, what I see moving forward is this is not just going to be a compliance requirement. At some point, someone will introduce a carbon tax which directly impacts your profit. It's coming down track 1. So the sooner we make these changes, the less impact that's going to have once somebody in the White House decides that's a great idea for your companies. So let's start the ball rolling now. So energy transition is already started. We need to accelerate it. Compliance requirements we've spoken about, the EPA. It's not just the EPA, it's ISO, it's everybody's getting involved. Solutions, all those design organisations, all those innovators out there coming up with new ideas, coming up with new solutions. We need to give them cash, we need to give them support, and we need to invest in their products. We've got technology products. This really frustrates me. We've got technology products that are not yet deployed, and I've got a slide on that that's going to shock you, hopefully shock you, into taking action. So it's all about how we get to our optimized ESG formula for all your individual organizations. And don't think that a consultant can come in and write it for you. You need to look at your operation and consider this carefully, because consultants will come in and tell you what they want you to do, and it might not match with what your aspirations are. So by all means take some guidance, but make your own decisions, write your own documentation. It's my strong recommendation. Otherwise, you'll end up spending a lot of money doing things that's not really making the impact that you want to make. So pretty much 6 ways to take that direct route into our emissions reduction, or emissions elimination as we prefer to report it as, going towards that net zero. Every single thing on here has an impact. Where we come from as a traditional valve repair company is engage in everything, but this thing down here is perfect for this conference. So all those guys out there with our technologies, they can help accelerate your journey to net zero, because if you know where your emissions are, you can do something about them. And that's the trick. Find them and fix them. What we don't want is LD companies. What we want is LDQAR companies. I've been trying to change that acronym for about 7 years now because it's broken. I actually made a presentation at the Valve World Conference and I said, LDAR is dead. That was the title of my presentation. And I had a room full of people wanting to kill me. Yeah? So LDAR in itself is not the thing that's dead. LDAR is dead because it misses the Q in the middle. It should be LDQAR. Because if you add the Q, that helps you with prioritization of AR. So if you miss the Q, you're not going to have the correct focus in your repair program. So why is it not there? Let's get LDQAR trending this week, please. I'll put a hashtag in, you can all like it. Okay, so you need a short-term plan, you need a medium-term plan, you need a long-term plan. Okay, in a small group of companies, we've got 30 locations around the world. This is like herding cats, getting everybody aligned. You know, oh, nobody cares about that in Malaysia. Nobody, you know, they've not discovered this in Australia yet. Middle East, nobody cares about emissions. We've got so much oil and gas, we can afford to put that up into the sky. Well, you might be able to afford to put it into the sky, but the sky can't afford to receive it. That's the problem. So collaboration is the only way, getting everybody on side, getting everybody contributing, being part of this journey is what's going to deliver that net zero number and help us protect the environment and get to that point where we don't have the global warming that's going to make our Earth uninhabitable. Regardless of where you sit in the world, the legislation is coming, and it's coming with a set of teeth. It's going to bite you, and it'll bite you hard. So, as I said before, start the journey now, implement things, revisit that LDAR program that you've already got running in your organisation and say, what does it miss? Have we got, is there tools missing from our toolkit? Is there strategies that we can put in play that accelerate that rate of change in terms of the reduction program? Have we got better at prioritising our repair scopes? Are we introducing new materials, new geometries and valves, or are we just replacing like with like? If you replace like with like, you'll see the same failure mode and the same time scale and have the same emissions at the end of it. How is that helping us? We need continuous improvement. We've got to break that chain somehow. So the international picture is variable. I've said this already, but if you look at each of the countries down on the left-hand side there, you can see the maturity in each market. And the United States is on the bottom line there. So the black dots, or dark blue dots, is pretty much what's mandated. And the USA is quite unique insofar as that different states have different laws as well. We don't see things like that in smaller countries like Britain. You know, it's one size fits all. So some of these white dots are compliance in certain areas or voluntary in other areas. But for me, this is effectively showing you what you need to be doing. Do we have prescriptive compliance requirements? Do we have performance-based requirements? That's my presentation tomorrow. It's in your best interest to do this. You'll make more money. You'll have a better reputation in the marketplace. Your people will be more motivated. You'll have less losses. You'll have more profits. Why wouldn't you want to do that? So economics and information-based systems. This is all about the monitoring and reporting processes. They are getting ramped up. Prove that you're making a difference. That's got nothing to do with compliance. So that's what CEOs are reporting around the world. The good news is we actually are generally making an impact on emissions reduction over time. And you see we had quite a specific drop round about the COVID time. Nobody was on the roads, everybody was sitting in their house, you know, people walking to the local shop if it was open, you know, emissions dramatically reduced. But of course, what's happened is they've spiked back up because we've all gone back to work. A lot of people still trying to work from home, of course, but generally speaking, the economy is back approximately where it was at the start of 2020. So that trajectory is going to go upwards from here unless we take the right decisions right now and make those changes. That's on a daily basis. So the key thing for us is knowing where the emissions come from. There's only 5 potential sources, some of which are blatantly obvious. I've marked up here by volume, carbon dioxide is the biggest contributor to global warming, but methane, that's by volume. Methane is the biggest damaging gas by toxicity. So it's 80 plus times more toxic to the environment and has a greenhouse gas effect, which is much more significant. So although it's lower volume, it's contributing more to what we're doing. And that's why people are talking about farming and we should be eating less meat and breeding less cows, because that is a massive contributor to methane. However, on our process plants, obvious sources, things like leaks to atmosphere, losses to flare. You know, a blind man can see when it's a 50-foot flare burning gas that should be sold to a customer. Yeah, all those offshore rights. I love marketing, guys. Ever looked at an oil company's marketing brochure? They always take the picture with the flare going off. That's like the worst PR thing you could ever do. Get those marketing guys told, right? Losses to flare. Things that are not so obvious, losses to vents and drains, system inefficiencies and non-fugitive emissions. And things like corrosion under insulation, big issue. You know, you can't see it, it's not obvious. How are we going to find that? We need specialist tools. So the key in leak detection is using the right tools, deploying them at the right time, and using them consistently. What we talk about is risk-based inspection to find that carbon footprint. I'm not going to run through all these numbers, but there's some fun numbers you can start calculating up to get your people to understand the impact of what's happening in your operation. You know, fun fact: 1 ton of CO2 is the same as almost 67,000 cups of tea. Do you know one of the most expensive things to run in your house is your kettle? I've got one of those little gas and electric consumption meters in my house to see it. And my wife switches the kettle on, I'm like, whoa, that's like £1.67 an hour to run that kettle. This is expensive as running your electric shower. Really expensive. Where your items in your production process are consuming energy, pumps, motors, those compressors that are running too hard because we've got air leaks on our air systems. Yeah, that's producing carbon at a fierce rate, and it doesn't need to happen. By their contribution factor are about 75% of the action. So that's great news for us as a valve repair company. You've got all these valves that are problems. Some of them you know about, some of you don't know about. So we'll come on, we'll find the problems, and then we'll fix the valves and make the problem go away. That is emissions elimination in a nutshell. It's a simple 4-step. Where are they happening on the plant, and what tools are we going to use to find them? So OGI cameras, thermal imaging, we've got ultrasonic cameras, we've got ultrasonic listening devices, we've got acoustic emissions, we manufacture our own tools, and we use third-party tools. There is no one company on the planet that manufactures all the tools to do all the jobs. So I mentioned already, collaboration is key. There is no other shortcut. Nobody has all the tools. So let's work with each other to make sure we get everything in play. This is the slide I said I was going to come back to. According to the International Energy Agency, it's on the screen. Leak detection and repair requirements, technologies, standards and plans on non-emergency flaring. It's coming down track 1. The saddest thing on that slide is that first bullet point there. The tools already exist, but they're not already getting used. Why is that? Our manufactured product, our top product for leak detection is a Midas meter. I've been taking that around the world for 12 years. I struggle to sell it in our home market in Aberdeen. People are like, la 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 la, don't want to know, don't want to. If we find a leak, we have to fix it. Yeah, that's the whole point. So I said, do you know what? Screw this market, I'm going international. And I took it around the world. And I've got 300 customers around the world to go, this product's great. I went back to the guys in Aberdeen and I went, are you interested yet? Well, we're not really interested yet, but come back once you've got a few more testimonials or what. I'm like, guys, this is nuts. I can't sell this in my home market. The adoption curve in mature economies is too long. We need to accelerate it. We need to use the tools that are already available. So don't feel like you're alone and there's no solutions out there. They're already there. That room's full of solutions. So go around the stands, meet the people, ask them the questions. Yes, get yourself involved in the weeds if you want. What's the sensitivity? What's the accuracy? Ask these questions. But the answer's simple. If you do something, it's reducing your emissions, which is taking you in the right direction. So don't get stuck on accuracy and, time to deployment and all that stuff. Just get on with the job. So this should be a closed loop. This is our digitalized asset integrity management system. You have to understand what's installed on your plant. You have to know what the weak spots are. You have to know where the potential emissions are coming from, and then you have to use the right tools to find them. Then you have to plan the repairs. Make sure the repairs happen, because that's the only thing that moves the dial on your emissions reduction. Make it go away. So here's my little slide on LDAR being dead. We need the queue in the middle. Let's get that trending. The queue is your prioritization. And I'll put this in perspective for you. We did a survey of 460 valves per customer in England. They said, we've got 460 suspect valves. Can you come and survey them with your Midas meter? Yeah, no problem. We surveyed them, and at the end of it, we said this: fix 2 of those valves, and 66% of your flare emissions will disappear. So what's the alternative? They were planning a major turnaround because they thought, well, we're probably going to have to repair about 300 valves. That needs a major turnaround. We said, don't shut the plant down. If you've got bypass lines to get those 2 valves out, repair those 2 valves, 66% of your problem goes away immediately. And we've already got the tools, we've already got the results. Let us go and repair those valves. So, massive impacts. This is not painful. This returns investment like you could not believe. And we've got lots of these case studies. We've got a little QR code on our stand, scan it, you can look at those case studies. Some of the numbers will scare you. Tons and tons of gas being taken out of the atmosphere by just repairing a handful of valves. It's fierce. So, 4-step process. We need to do the surveys, we need to analyse the results, prioritise our elimination programme, do the necessary repairs, and guess what? We've got an opportunity to improve things moving forward. Don't just take out your valve data sheet and buy another one the same. Go back to the manufacturer and say, this packing leaked after 2 years. That shouldn't happen. I want 5 years out of that. Give me better packing. Or change the geometry in the stuffing box, or whatever solution you can bring to the table. Let's get that continuous improvement model running. That requires you to collect data. See all these CMS systems that are in play. The computer guys sold you CMS systems. This is the answer to your maintenance management problems. It's a disaster because they just lock you into calendar-based maintenance. What you should be doing is prioritise-based maintenance. You should be doing value-based maintenance based on condition monitoring techniques and analysis. So leak detection and repair sits in those 2 boxes. Guess what score do? We add the queue. The analysis shows you where to do your work to get the best return on investment in your maintenance budget. We can save you money on your maintenance budget and reduce your emissions at the same time. You say to yourself, how is that possible?
About 35.
Continuous improvement. We don't want to go through the same cycle every single time. Let's take the dial forward. So recommended practices, all the right maintenance tools being used, all the right maintenance techniques, procedures. We've got some pretty sexy, unique solutions for problems that you think haven't yet been solved. They've been solved, but valves are mechanical items. So find it and fix it. It's a simple approach. No rocket science here, but we have to make it happen. This is the gas plant 5 miles from my house. It's a beautiful flare. When that flare goes off, the whole of East Central Scotland lights up. Switch the street lights off, we don't need them. It's nuts. So, site surveys, data analytics, mitigation actions and continuous improvement. That is our closed loop. It can be delivered with the right tools, with the right people, with the right training, with the right competencies, and actually do the work. Once we do that, the emissions disappear. So it's a fully integrated system. I encourage you to do the same in your organisations or deploy us. Our start point over there is a long way behind the curve of where we need to be. If we want to go to zero leaks and emissions, it's a journey. We need temporary repairs, we need continuous improvement, and we need future turnarounds to be guided by the data that we can collect in our condition monitoring, those risk-based inspection approaches. Decision-making processes, right tools, and let's even push the boat further, because we've not stopped developing our tools. We still try and make them even better. Can we find smaller leaks? Can we find them faster? You know, what we're going to do with that data? How are we going to get that data to the customer faster? How are we going to help drive his decision-making or her decision-making process? The tools, they're all there. We don't need new tools. We don't need more tools. Just use the tools you've got. If you've not invested in these tools, I can tell you, pretty much everything on that slide will pay for itself in the first week. 1 week, return on investment. You go, oh, your minus meter's $30,000. I'll give you that back in a day. On process efficiency, simple. Visual inspections, minus meter, minus sensor permanently installed. You don't even have to have a person going around doing all the surveys. You can permanently install some of this stuff. And I know you're going to talk to me about Fenceline monitoring and UAVs and drones and all that stuff. It's all part of the mix. Satellites. I look forward to the day when satellites can find 100 ppms leaking out of a gland packet, because then I'll just kick in back and have a relaxing day. Not going to happen anytime soon. We can use the Hubble telescope to see millions of light years away, but we can't look in the opposite direction yet. I don't know why. It's not that simple. Every solution that was ever delivered started from someone saying it's not that simple. But get the scientists, get the engineers on it, let's work out what we need to do to at least get a little bit closer. Sources of leaks, different tools, sniffer devices, method 21, optical gas imaging or airborne ultrasound, air lines, running your compressors less, thermal imaging cameras. Can we see a significant Joule-Thomson effect either side of a valve? That's an indication of leakage. So we've got some pretty unique tools in the SCORE group that differentiate us from other service companies. I encourage you to come and play with the minus meter on our stand. You'll find something new and unique there, because it's not really that widespread. We've got more customers in the nuclear market in America than we do in upstream and downstream processing facilities. So we've got a lot of work to do. And we'll just set up a new team in Houston to look after that. Ready right now shows you which tool to look for which leak, where, and how often. So we've done all this work. It all exists. You don't have to scratch your head and go, where do I start? You know, consultants will show you the pathway. You make your own decisions once you understand all the variables and parameters. The key part of this to make the emissions go away is having all the repair methodologies and techniques and tooling available to do that either back in the workshop or on site. Not everyone has the talent. The biggest challenge for us in this space is people, and you'll hear that probably multiple times this week. As we move forward, the next generation don't want to come into processing plants. They want to be YouTube gamers. They want to be influencers. They want to be programmers on computers. Nobody wants to do oil and gas. Nobody wants to do nuclear. But we need that. We need that set of engineers, so we need to excite them. We need to get them to understand all the exciting things they can be involved in. So we had a recruitment night in Scotland on Thursday night. We didn't say, come and be engineers. We said posters around the school saying, who's interested in the environment? Who wants to make a difference in emissions reduction? Who's getting excited about greening our technologies? Guess what? They were queuing at the door because we didn't say engineering. We said environmental engineering. That's what the next generation are focused on. And that's
5 minutes.
5 minutes? Good. Case studies, lots of them. This one here was a little survey we did. We got a 60% reduction by doing temporary repairs on site. We then planned a major turnaround. At the end of that, we reached almost 100% of leaks gone. And you can see the work scope, 178 online leaks addressed in various fashions. 8 valves, through seat leakage, barrier solutions, sealant injection, changing out 700 valves, repairs, 1,086 flange joints, reassembled, new gaskets, flange facing, remachining, all that done on site. So that was a massive project for us, brilliant return on investment for the customer. 700,000 of downtime per day avoided. So all the valves that we didn't touch, because we surveyed them and we said those valves are okay, reduced the overall work scope of the major turnaround. Because there was 10 times the number of valves that we touched in that survey. So, big return on investment. The biggest cost on any plant is downtime. I'm sure everybody knows that. Somewhere between $1 and $3 million a day on most processing plants. So it takes all of us. This is a collaborative effort. You know, I've got some tools, I've got some ideas, I've got some repair equipment. You know, you guys have got the process plants, you've got the problems, we can come and help you. Working together is what's going to take us to net zero. Not somebody coming and telling you, here's an easy pathway, simple things, and that'll all go away. The tools that I've shown you so far are handheld tools. Obviously, there are layers here. We've spoken about the drones, the UAVs, the satellites, it's all coming down track 1, and that technology is improving at a rapid rate of knots. Fenceline monitoring, you'll have heard of that. One of the challenges is air movement, air speed. So one of our partner companies, sister companies up in Calgary is looking at algorithms to address distance of travel, wind speed, direction of wind, and all that good stuff. Here's the kicker. The EPA are driving up and down your fence line with monitors in vans saying, what can we find on your plant?
That's right.
And if they find too much, they're shutting you down.
That's right.
Or fining you. So that's always compliance stuff's coming right down front. I want to be on the wrong side of it. Final couple of slides then. Carbon calculator here is something we do internally. On every single quote we put for new valves, we tell our customer what the carbon footprint is in comparison to repairing the valve they've already got on the site. So this is recycling, upcycling, reusing. In this instance, 91% carbon reduction by doing a valve repair instead of a valve replacement. So you want to make a massive impact? That seems like a good number to me, 91%. And by the way, when you throw that valve in the skip, are they actually even going to recycle the steel? Is it going to landfill, or what's happening with that? So we need to think about all these things. Massive improvements can be made. It's a win-win. You guys are going to win on emissions reduction, efficiency gains, and all the rest of it, and we're going to win because we're helping you deliver net zero and we're making enough money to survive. Certainly making enough money to justify me travelling here to help you reduce your emissions. People say to me, why do you get us so many planes? Look at all the emissions you're putting out. And it's the opposite of that. I am an evangelist for emissions reduction. So our technology will significantly more than offset anything I'm producing in terms of CO2 by getting a plane coming here. But we need engagement and we need rollout programs. All these things that I've mentioned, we work together, the emissions will be eliminated. The key message I want to give you is A, collaboration, and B, what you're waiting for. Do it now. Start the day. Let's get the ball rolling. That's the presentation. Happy to try and take any questions if we have time. Failing that, as I said before, we are on the stand that we have some of this kit with us. We'll show you little demos. These are all also on YouTube, Twitter. There is a QR code, you can scan that, and again, lots more information available there. So 4805, and you can reach us at eep@score-group.com. Thank you for your attention. If there are any
Outstanding.
questions.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.